What is going on? It just took me 4 hours to get from Santa Clara to San Francisco. I could get partially into the story, but I want to talk about Brandon Aiyuk and CeeDee Lamb. But today was the day that I took Bart. I took my bike on the train. Bart had a meltdown on the East Bay. I couldn't go that way. I had to cross back on VTA. Then I had to come up on Caltrain. Two trains stalled the tracks at one point on VTA. The driver had to get out and try to fix them. I'm not kidding. And I have a flight to catch in a couple hours. So I'm not going to sit here lamenting how everything went into a tailspin on my drive home. I was just really excited to talk to you about Brandon Aiyuk, the 49ers, and how the 49ers, at some point, they've got to stand on principle. And I think that we're seeing at least a little bit of that right now. So forget about the commute home. That was a disaster. We have a little bit of time before I have to rush down to SFO and catch a flight to Nashville for tomorrow's Lombardi Lounge meetup, 5 p.m., Omni Hotel. See you there if you're in Nashville, and obviously the 49ers Titans game on Saturday. All right. So anyway, holding pattern right now, 49ers, reportedly the Steelers. According to reports, the Steelers are not willing to offer the compensation that the 49ers want for Brandon Aiyuk. Supposedly, Aiyuk himself has agreed to the Pittsburgh compensation package, but that's separate from the compensation package that the 49ers would need to receive from the Steelers. So that obviously is holding things up. The 49ers, at the bottom line, they do not have any incentive from a rational point of view. Now, if emotions get involved, it's a little bit different. But from a rational business point of view, there is no incentive for the 49ers to give away Brandon Aiyuk for anything less than a cost that they deem fair. And at some point, they do need to stand on principle with this. He's under contract with them, and they need to make sure that if they let him escape the contract that he's under, that they get a fair return. Otherwise, it sets really bad precedent. This could set precedent into future negotiations. I'll say this. Last year, Nick Bosa won his contract negotiation with the 49ers. Absolutely. I mean, he held out until 2 or 3 days before the start of the regular season. And then he was able to get a contract that was not only the top contract for a defender in NFL history, but the top contract for a non-quarterback in NFL history. We thought that, maybe Aaron Donald's number would be tough to surpass because nobody else on the defensive side was above $30 million per year. Bosa blew it away. He ended at $34 million. What was it? $87 million fully guaranteed. It was huge. Justin Jefferson actually broke the receiver market, probably in an even greater way because receivers weren't even close to the top of the defensive end market. But Justin Jefferson, when he looked for a contract to try to usurp, he pointed at Bosa's. And his numbers were $35 million because Bosa's was $34 per year. So he wanted to eclipse that. And then his guaranteed number was $88 million fully guaranteed. Justin Jefferson eclipsed, I think, $87.5 million fully guaranteed for Nick Bosa. So it was a precedent-setting contract. But the truth of the matter is that it was administered within the 49ers ecosystem. And the 49ers have the most highly paid stars in the National Football League. Combine that truth with the fact that salary cap space, even if you control the flow of the salary cap, a lot of people like to call it manipulating the cap. Even if you manipulate the cap, move money around, signing bonuses, push it into the future, salary cap space, even with flow control, is a finite resource. So if the 49ers are giving out big deals every single season, they've got to be really careful about where the monetary limit of those deals is. How much money is flowing into the salary cap sink every year? Because that's going to have to come and hit the cap at some point, even if you're pushing it into the future with some of these signing bonuses. So it was George Kittle, 2020, Fred Warner in 2021. They also gave out a record contract to Trent Williams in 2021. Maybe we should be talking about that holdout a little bit more. Deebo Samuel, big money in 2022. And then Nick Bosa in 2023 was the biggest money of all of those contracts. And I think the 49ers managed to keep the ones prior to that at their budget. I wouldn't say that they won the negotiations. I wouldn't say that they lost those negotiations. I would just say that those were good negotiations. Both the player and the team ended up happy. Bosa, they were so desperate to get him into the building because it had lasted that long. It just showed how much leverage Nick Bosa had because of the type of player that he is and the position that he plays. He's the reigning defensive player of the year. Bosa, I think it's clear, won the negotiation with the 49ers. So now we are living in a world where the 49ers are operating with the knowledge that Bosa won that negotiation last year, and Brock Purdy's contract is probably going to come up next season, and that's going to be one that's really hard to win as well if you're the team, because he's the quarterback. He's got ultimate leverage. If you thought Bosa had a lot of leverage, Brock Purdy is going to have even more. It's a tough situation right now for both sides because Brandon Aiyuk falls in between Bosa's year and Purdy's year. Just bad luck probably for Brandon Aiyuk in that regard. So the 49ers have to make sure that they do not let losing contract negotiations become precedent. They lost one last year to Bosa. So I think it's very self-explanatory why they're playing the hard line here with Brandon Aiyuk. They're trying to make sure that they set a proper precedent for future negotiations. Now, there's a lot of talk online. There's just like a tweet that somebody, I think it was TJ Hushmansada actually, who's worked with Brandon Aiyuk. He's like, well, the 49ers, this is crazy. They're not getting this done for the difference of $2 million per year. They offered 26. All he wants is 28. Well, the main point here is average per year does not tell us enough about a deal. It doesn't. Again, it's the fully guaranteed money and the guaranteed money. I could give you an example. When Tyreek Hill signed his contract before this one, look at that. Nothing's going right today with the technical stuff. First the train, then the mic starts slipping. Gonna have to make sure this stays up there. When Tyreek Hill signed his contract prior to this one, he was able to get it to $30 million per year, but he was only able to get it there because he had a $43 million salary in the final season of his deal that was not guaranteed. So the team had an easy out at any time it wanted. The team wasn't obligated to pay the money at the end of the deal that actually made the deal average per year, the APY, $30 million. So you can fake your way to high APY. So there, for more crystal clear example here, there could be a deal that's worth $30 million average per year that is a worse contract than one that is worth $26 million per year. So everybody's saying, well, the Patriots offered him $32 million per year. Well, that's great, but we don't know the guarantees. We don't know the fully guaranteed money, which is the money that's guaranteed for skill, and the total guaranteed money, which includes the money that's guaranteed for injury. So everybody's going out and talking like they know contracts, like they know, oh yeah, 28 million, 2 million, that's easy for the 49ers, without acknowledging they don't know the details. That's like it's like appraising a house without looking to see what's inside the house, right? Like without looking to see that the piping's not all burst and the air conditioning is working. Like you actually have to look at the anatomy of the deal to know if it's a good deal or not. So people are going to be tossing around New England 32 million, 49ers 26 million. He actually wants 28. That is so surface level that it hurts. So APY does not tell us enough. Next thing, leverage. When we talk about the 49ers standing on principle, they can afford to stand on principle because, yes, they do have leverage in this situation. There have been some debates about leverage as of late. Leverage is determined by what each side can credibly threaten to do in a standoff. Okay. So the 49ers, this is what they can credibly threaten to do. They can be Brandon Aiyuk's only avenue to payment in 2024. What do I mean by that? Well, he's under contract with them. It's the 5th-year option. He was drafted in the first round in 2020. He had 4 years at a rookie rate. And then the 5th-year option, which the 49ers picked up last season, is fully guaranteed at the time that the team exercises it. It was determined to be $14.1 million for Brandon Aiyuk by the formula set aside in the collective bargaining agreement. CeeDee Lamb's is a little bit more expensive. We'll get to CeeDee Lamb's 5th-year option here in a little bit because there's been some drama on social media on the Dallas front, but it was a set at a fully guaranteed $14.1 million. Brandon Aiyuk is under contract for that amount. If the 49ers just put their hands in their pockets and do nothing, and Brandon Aiyuk does nothing too in return, then he won't get paid this year. His only avenue to payment is the 49ers, unless the 49ers decide that they want to do something else. But it's up to the team to actually execute a trade. So when I say leverage is determined by what each side can credibly threaten to do, that's what the 49ers can credibly threaten to do. What's Brandon Ayuk's leverage? Well, Brandon Aiyuk can threaten to sit out the season and make nothing. Is that a credible threat? If he threatens to do that, I'm not sure. Maybe it is. Maybe he's willing to do that. Le'Veon Bell did that, right? Speaking of the Pittsburgh Steelers, that was with the Steelers. Le'Veon Bell decided to sit out the full season. You don't make those game checks. So Brandon Ayuk's $14.1 million. You divide that by 18, it's like $780,000. Every game check is $780,000. That's what he would forfeit each and every week. The 49ers, it's up to their discretion, by the way. They can start fining Brandon Aiyuk up to the cost of one game check, even in the preseason, if he doesn't play. I don't know if the team's going to do that, but in reading the collective bargaining agreement over the years, that is one thing that I learned. The teams, basically, when we talk about leverage, the teams by the CBA have a lot of power, more power in the NFL than they do in the other leagues. Like the NBA, much more player friendly, which is why you could see guys picking their team. And, even if they're under contract, it seems that the stars are able to force their way to places. In the NFL, maybe quarterbacks are starting to develop that power because there's such an outsized importance on the field for the quarterback position. I mean, imagine next year if Brock Purdy doesn't show up to training camp. If he's not at camp at this point, it's August 8th. 49ers would be inoperable. Like they would know that their season is kaput if Brock Purdy doesn't show up. That's leverage. With Nick Bosa, there was like, oh God, yeah, this guy better come in at some point because our defense is going to crater without him. It wasn't as bad as the quarterback not being there, but it was still pretty bad. So they eventually fold it right before the start of the regular season. Aiyuk is not through any fault of his own. He's a fantastic receiver, but he's just not in that same position. The 49ers have Deebo Samuel. They have Christian McCaffrey. They have George Kittle. They have Jawan Jennings. They have Kyle Juszczyk. Probably forgot a really good receiver, but you get the idea. I could list that for 5 minutes, and we won't run out of names. And Brock Purdy's a really good quarterback. So if leverage is determined by what each side can credibly threaten to do, the 49ers can much more credibly say, Brandon Aiyuk, we are your only avenue of payment for 2024. They can much more credibly say that than Brandon Aiyuk can say, yeah, I'm just going to sit out and I'll make nothing. That's just the way that this is set up. Like it or not, just giving you the facts. That's how the business dynamics are laid out by the collective bargaining agreement. And that's what the 49ers, I think, are showing right now. They control their own destiny in a rational game. Now, an irrational game, things would be a little bit different, right? If Brandon Aiyuk starts bugging Kyle Shanahan too much at the facility, we got that report from Mike Silver that Shanahan wasn't happy about the hold-in, and Shanahan is just like, I don't want him in here. He's bad for the locker room. This is an if. I'm not saying this is what Shanahan thinks, but I'm saying that if it reached a tipping point to where the 49ers thought that this wasn't good for the team morale and having Brandon Aiyuk holding in and not playing was something that was hurting them, that was a net negative, well, then, I think that emotions would be at play. It wouldn't just be a rational business game. It wouldn't be just a cut and dry spreadsheet kind of game. And in that case, if there's an externality there that, is affecting the thought process, then yeah, maybe the 49ers would give away the keys, so to speak, to their own destiny. Maybe they would move into, okay, we'll accept the trade. But until it reaches that point, they have high ground here. They have firm ground here to where they don't have to accept the trade that doesn't make them better or isn't commensurate value, isn't something that's acceptable. They don't have to deal from a position of scarcity here. They can deal from a position of abundance with Brandon Aiyuk still under contract with the football team. So it comes back to the top. At some point, the 49ers have to stand on principle, because you can't stand on principle when you're in an abundance kind of situation. Then when are you ever going to stand on principle? This is not just about this contract negotiation. It's about future ones as well. You look into the, Charvarius Ward is going to come up for a new deal this next season. Diamaro Lenore is going to be coming up for a new deal next season. The salary cap is, we're going to go back to the analogy. The salary cap is like a sink, but every year's salary cap situation is a sink, and expenditures or payments to players, contracts, are water flowing through the faucet into the sink. There are mechanisms in case the sink water level gets too high in any given year. There are mechanisms to push the water into future years. So the sinks are connected by a pipe. You drain water out of one year and it fills, 20% into year 2, 20% into year 3, 20, into the subsequent years. You can prorate these cap hits of signing bonuses after the restructures for up to 4 years. So it's a constant management of sink levels in each season. But it's, so people say, okay, well, you can manipulate the cap. That's great. You can get under the cap. Unless too much water overwhelms the system. At that point, you can't manipulate the cap anymore. You just have to start cutting people. The 49ers of the late 1990s had to disband the franchise. Right, or not the franchise, the dynasty. They had to disband the dynasty. Don't worry, the 49ers still exist. They didn't stop. They didn't go out of business after the 1990s, although it might have seemed like it based on their play on the field. They had to disband the dynasty after the 1990s because they got into salary cap hell. We've seen teams like the Saints, who push it to the limit, have to cut players as well. The Rams, the other year, they had to cut players. The 49ers, whether you like it or not, I'm just explaining the strategy right now. They're intent on keeping things as sustainable as possible. Now, there's a whole subset of the fan base that really wants them to just mortgage the future and go all in for 2024. And I totally understand that. And there's a compelling argument to make regarding that. But the 49ers think that they could straddle the line. They could walk the tightrope. They think that they could have their cake and eat it too in this situation. So far, up to this point, they've been able to do that. And they've been able to allow that water through flow control to keep the various sinks at a water level that is manageable. But you've got to realize there's going to be a whole heck of a lot of water pouring in with Brock Purdy's contract. There was more water than they anticipated that poured in with Nick Bosa's contract. So they're very delicately handling whatever they can offer to Brandon Aiyuk. And if they pour a little bit too much into the water system here, the salary cap system that they have for Brandon Aiyuk, it might mean that they can't re-sign one or of Charvarius Ward or Diamaro Lenore, or both of Charvarius Ward or Diamaro Lenore. That might be the trade-off that you're making. I'm not saying that is the trade-off they're making. It's really, really hard to know exactly what the trade-offs will be. You guys know I delve through this really, really deeply when I do my 49ers salary cap stuff here. I have it all tracked just so I could prove it to some of you who are new viewers. I have this prepared on a year-by-year basis. So here's my 2024 spreadsheet. You can see the liabilities. You could see the cap space. And then here's the 2025 spreadsheet. They've got $22.6 million in 2025 of room under my projected salary cap, but they're going to be able to carry over the space they don't use this year. So say they carry over 20, which is probably aggressive, but if they carry over 20, they've got $42 million next year, but they only have 31 players under contract, and that's still at Purdy's old number, and Brandon Aiyuk's not even included in 2025. And also, I don't know exactly what the cap is going to be. I'm guessing $280 million. The 49ers are guessing now too. It's tied to the size of league revenues. So it is a delicate situation when you have the most highly paid stars in the NFL to thread the needle to make sure that every single time one of these new guys wants to get paid, and Aiyuk's not new, but he's new to getting paid the big bucks here in the NFL. Every single time one of these guys and their contract comes up, you've got to make sure that you are delicately managing this situation here through the years so that you don't hit an overflow point at an inopportune time in the future. Because salary cap space, even with flow control, is a finite resource. So that's why the 49ers are where they're at. And as far as the trade with the Steelers, I think it's really clear when we analyze what's going on right now. The 49ers, Diana Rossini reported today that they somehow want a receiver back, but the Steelers are unwilling to send a player over. So then it gets complicated because you say, okay, maybe can the 49ers bring in a third team somehow, make this a Mike fell again. Make this a three-way trade of some sort. That we see that happen in NBA a lot. We rarely have seen it, if at all, in the National Football League. So that could be something that ends up satisfying the 49ers from a compensation point of view, but it's extremely unlikely to attain. The easiest thing to do probably for San Francisco is to put their hands in their pockets, but they also want to maximize their chances of winning, and they also have to think about the dynamics of the building and the team. And that leads me to the final point of potentially just mortgaging the future. And this is what a lot of fans seem to want. A lot of fans are like, okay, fine, just pay him whatever he wants. So he ends this hold in and he gets to work. And so the 49ers have the best team possible. And so I look at it as two schools of thought. You could be, and we've seen this happen before in NFL history, teams that just push every single chip into the middle of the table. For example, the 1994 49ers did this. They pushed every chip into the middle of the table because they had lost twice in a row to the Dallas Cowboys. They wanted to beat them really bad and ended up winning them a Super Bowl. But it also ended up being the turning point for that dynasty, because they had to let go of Ricky Waters the next offseason. Everybody lamented that, but they didn't have a run game anymore in 95. And the 49ers haven't won a Super Bowl since. So I get it, because a lot of, I think, 49ers fans lived through the 90s. They lived through the frustration of the 49ers losing to the Cowboys twice in a row, kind of like the current age 49ers have lost to the Chiefs twice in a row. And they saw the 1994 49ers mortgage everything to beat the Cowboys in 94, and it worked. That's the last Super Bowl that 49ers fans have seen. So I got to put up one of the 94 49ers team Super Bowl posters up when I talk about this kind of stuff. I'll swap out the posters in the future. But, I totally get it, because that had led to success, but it also led to, a painful rebuild. And it's a rebuild that, several rebuilds later after that, 49ers have yet to win another Super Bowl. So I could tell you that this front office believes that they can walk that line. I know that a lot of fans disagree with that. I know that there is murkiness because you look at the future salary cap projections and you're not exactly sure where the cap is going to be. You're not exactly sure what Brock Purdy is going to make. And that's the fun of all of this. We just don't know exactly where the truth is going to be. Everybody's kind of, feeling around in the dark. We'll put it that way. They're trying to find where the guardrail is, where the wall is, and they're trying to do their very best to make sure the 49ers are salary cap compliant for the long haul, and also fielding the best possible team in 2024. And the biggest asset at the 49ers disposal right now in this Brandon Aiyuk situation is the fact that they do indeed have the leverage. Now, he's got a little bit of leverage if you move it to a trade sphere, but it doesn't move to a trade sphere until the 49ers actually agree on compensation with a team that Brandon Aiyuk is interested in going to. If it's just within the realm of localized negotiations within the 49ers building, that's where San Francisco has Brandon Aiyuk under contract, and that's where they do have an upper hand. All right, we'll see how this works out. It is a game of chicken. It's a standoff. It's a stare down. It's a stare down, and I am very much looking forward to seeing what the next chapter is. One of the more volatile situations that we've seen contractually, maybe in NFL history at this point. So it really is fascinating what we're seeing here. And the next steps are definitely going to be very, very scrutinized, and I will cover them deeply here as well. Hope you enjoyed the show. I was able to squeeze one in. I've got a flight to catch. I got a bag to pack. I will see everybody soon.